Hello again, everyone. This is Talking with Tatum, and I'm Barry Tatum. There are 4 governments here in Wilson County, headed up by 4 mayors. On this episode, we'll speak with the one who's in charge of the city of Lebanon, Bernie Ash. We'll find out about his days growing up in Lebanon, what he did during the Vietnam War, how he became a mud engineer, whatever that is, and of course, we'll learn why and how he got into local government and what it's like to manage a fast-growing city. Keep it here. Talking with Tatum starts right now. Thank you for joining us for Talking with Tatum, and we have Mayor Bernie Ash, Mayor of Lebanon. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Barry. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you could take some time out of your schedule to share your story with us and tell us a little bit about your life and your involvement with Lebanon.
Well, I've had a good life, and I've been in Lebanon all my life and enjoyed it very much, so it'll be fun talking about it.
Okay. Well, I asked you before we went on the air, I wasn't sure about this, but you were born here, so you're a Lebanon native.
That's right. I was born in, I'll tell you, 1947 at Martha Gaston Hospital. And so I've spent haven't spent my entire life here, but I was born and raised here.
And went to school here in Lebanon?
Went to Highland Heights Elementary School and junior high school over there, and Lebanon High School, graduated in '65.
And tell us a little bit about your parents or grandparents or your family growing up, who they were, and folks that might remember them.
Okay. My dad was Dave Ash. My mother was Ruth Ash. Mother worked for the phone company for many, many years, retired there. My dad, a lot of older folks will remember, ran the Ash grocery store over on North Cumberland Street, and later on he got into the well drilling business and did that from '57 up until he passed away in '86.
Well, he did that for a good long while.
Good long time. My brother is still running the business, and I worked in it for a while myself.
And that's Luke, I believe.
Luke's my brother.
And but '65, graduated from Lebanon High School.
Mm-hmm.
And that was right during that time we've all heard about the Vietnam era.
Vietnam War. At that time, the mid to late '60s, every young boy getting ready to graduate high school had to make a decision whether he's going to go to college or what he's going to do with the Vietnam War. And I worked for a year in Nashville for Servimation, and one day I got off work and I said, I think I'll just go down to the recruiting office for the Air Force and join up, and that's what I did. And
that was in '66?
'66.
And I guess back then they probably did the basic training down in San Antonio like they do now.
Well, they would have, but they're having a meningitis outbreak at San Antonio, so they sent a bunch of us to Amarillo, Texas.
Okay.
They had a bunch of condemned barracks that they freshened up for us. And,
welcome, boys.
If you've never been to Amarillo, don't go.
You don't see it's a hot vacation destination. Really.
No, it's not a lot going on down there, and it's all flat country with tumbleweeds and sand. And in fact, the first thing they told us, if you want to go AWOL, go ahead. We'll watch you run for 3 or 4 days. They come get you. So that pretty much kept us on the base.
Well, that's it. But you go through basic training.
Yep.
And did a 4-year hitch in the Air Force.
Did a 4-year hitch in the Air Force. I was a chaplain's assistant, which was a good job. If you'll be in the Air Force,
yeah.
It was a good job.
Did you have any interest in the ministry, or how did they make that decision?
Well, when I went in, when I was 16, I had an interest in going into the ministry. And that was my thought when I joined the Air Force, to be a chaplain's assistant, to get some experience with that, and come out, go to college, and be a minister. But life got in the way, and things changed.
Yeah,
changed for the better, I think.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if there had been any pastors or preachers in your family before you.
No,
But church was a big part of your life.
Church was a big part of my life from 15 on up. Yeah. Got saved at First Baptist Church here in Lebanon, right across from the courthouse, and took an interest in the ministry at that time. Okay.
So you go into the Air Force, you get the assignment as a chaplain's assistant.
Right.
But you wound up having to go to Vietnam at some point.
I did. It's a 4-year hitch in the Air Force, and I had 13 months or 12 months left, and they sent me to Vietnam.
They figured they better get their money's
Go
worth.
get their money's worth out of it. Actually, I found out later I had worked for a chaplain earlier at Selfridge Air Force Base in Michigan, and he recommended me.
What did you do to him?
That's what I was wondering.
But he recommended you, and you, in all seriousness, you go
Yeah.
over there.
Right.
And when you're in a combat situation where there's an active war going on, it's not that a chaplain's job is ever easy.
That's right.
You're dealing with a lot of people far away from home, a lot of them young, scared, and also injured and dead.
There's a lot of that, and one of the things that I hadn't thought about was a lot of soldiers in Vietnam got Dear John letters, and they come right to the chaplain.
Really?
And talk to him. But I was lucky to have that job, because I wasn't out in the jungle. However, we were hit by rockets and mortars on a pretty regular basis, and as into the bunker and waited out, grab your weapons and all that kind of thing. And
Well, there wasn't really a safe place.
it was not a safe place. It's better than being out in the jungle, I guarantee you that.
Right.
But the chaplains could not carry weapons, and the chaplains would leave the base, go to orphanages and churches and remote areas where troops were, and I would have to carry the weapon and ride with him in the Jeep. The chaplain would drive. I asked the chaplain one day, we were riding, and I said, "Chaplain, do you really feel safe with me over here?" He said, "Not really, Bernie."
Well, I hope you said something about his driving.
No, I had a gun. I could have taken him out.
But you mentioned they would go out in the country from time to time and go to orphanages and go to
Right.
Remote bases.
Right.
Did you have any contact with the indigenous personnel or indigenous peoples, the Vietnamese over there much?
Yes, in the chapel we had a young secretary who worked for us, a Vietnamese national, and she spoke 4 languages, and she had actually seen her brother and father drug out of her house and shot to death. But and of course we had janitorial help who were Vietnamese people, and I would meet local, typical to being a mayor, the village chief.
Right.
And when we'd go out, we'd meet and talk to them, and a lot of troops, Army, Marine, whoever, would build churches for the local people.
Really?
So we would visit those sites.
That's something that's really hard for me to put wrap my mind around is being a teenager growing up in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And, by the age of 21, 22, being on the other side of the world, exposed to a whole different culture.
It's an amazing experience. I know that it was a 19-hour flight over there. We flew in, and just as we got over Vietnam airspace, got to where we were going to land, the plane flies, hits the ground, slams on the brakes, they get us all out of the airplane onto a bus with wire screened across the windows, and take off and get us off of the off of the airfield, and into a chow hall somewhere. But it was quite an awakening.
Well, you said you had 13 months left in your hitch with the Air Force.
Yeah.
Did you stay the whole 13 in Vietnam?
I stayed 12 and got out a month early.
Okay. And when you had that experience in the Air Force and your year in Vietnam, coming out of that, what were your plans about coming back? What did you see yourself doing? Or you said you had thought about the ministry, but plans changed.
I was still thinking about the ministry at that time, and when I got home, I went to Cumberland. It was a 2-year school at that time. I didn't finish the whole 2 years. I left that little part. I'd gotten married and had a little girl before I went to Vietnam.
Okay.
But when I got back, I was working at the Precision Rubber, the second shift, and going to Cumberland in the daytime. And of course, with the family and all, it got a little tough. And my dad and my brother asked me to come into the business with them, the well drilling business with them. So I left school and went to the well drilling business.
Now, today in our county, I don't know what the percentage of it is, but I suspect 90% of the population of Wilson County at least has access to public water.
That's correct. But we we were drilling not only water wells, but blast holes for rock quarries. We did coal strip mines, shallow oil wells, things of that nature. There's a lot to keep us busy. My brother continues to do the business today, and he was one of the first in Lebanon to begin doing
geothermal
drilling.
Neighbor of mine had him
Yeah.
put one in, and your brother did the drilling for
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah, my brother, he did one for his house. He's done a lot in Wilson County and different places, and has done quite well with it.
Just backing up a little bit about your dad, you said he was in the grocery business,
Yeah, he ran a little grocery store over on North Cumberland, right at the corner of Forest Avenue.
and then he got into the well drilling business. How did he make that transition or connection? Did he
Well,
pick that up?
a friend of his was in the well drilling business, Dale Robinson.
Okay.
And at that time, they used the old cable tube drills. It would take about a week to drill a 100-foot well, and just pound a hole in the ground.
Really?
Yeah, but he got into the business then, and by the mid '70s, we were, my brother, my dad, and I were in the business. We had moved on to air drills, and we were doing quite well with staying busy.
But at some point, after getting into the family business and having a wife and a little child, you made a move to Texas and did some pretty hard work down there.
I did. I got out of the business. I forget what the year that it was now, but my brother and I had drilled a water well around Statesville. And we stopped at the store in Statesville to get a bologna sandwich and a Coke. When we came out, I got up in the rig to start it, and it didn't want to start. It was cranking over, and it was moving slowly, and it tapped the outside gas tank on this store, which spewed gas out of it into the carburetor. It blew up, burnt the store to the ground, burnt the drill up.
That's a memorable day.
It was, and after that, we were out of business, and we didn't have a drill. So I saw an ad in the paper, in the Nashville paper, looking for mud engineers in Houston. Didn't know what a mud engineer was, but I figured, well, I could probably do that. And I sent in an application, and they were in Nashville interviewing and giving tests, and lo and behold, they offered me the job, and I went off to Houston.
And into the oil drilling business.
Into the oil drilling business.
Now, just briefly, before we get into your political career, what does a mud engineer do?
A mud engineer goes out on a well site and runs chemical tests on the fluids that they pump into the well, and makes recommendations to treat that fluid to make sure that it's the proper pH and does everything that it's supposed to do for the situation that they're in.
And you're drilling for, I guess, crude oil or natural gas? Crude oil
and natural gas both, yeah.
And you stayed out in Texas about how long?
I was out there for 5 years.
And then decided to come back to Lebanon.
Yeah, what happened, my dad passed away in '86.
Okay.
And I decided my mom was still alive, and I wanted to be with her.
Right.
So we packed up and came back to Tennessee.
Well, I know family is really important to you, but
Oh, absolutely.
when we come back from our break here in just a second, we'll talk about your kids. I've heard about one girl, but I know there's some more.
Yep.
And then we'll talk about how you transitioned into politics.
Okay, do that.
And we're back talking with Mayor Bernie Ashe after a brief break. And before we went to the break, I mentioned that we've heard about one child, but you had a couple more somewhere along the line.
My oldest child is Alice, my daughter, and she has three children.
Okay.
And she's moved out to California, San Francisco, and is a X-ray technician out there. Actually, she's over the department there, making good money, doing real well.
Good for her.
And we're proud of her.
Yeah.
And my youngest son, I'm skipping the middle son, I'll be back to him. My youngest son, he was a band director, and he moved to Florida. He's married, has 3 children, 3 little boys, and he is teaching music appreciation at Florida Central College in Ocala, Florida.
All right.
Yeah. Now, my middle son, Bill, I told him he's my favorite because he stayed. He's here in Lebanon, and he has two grown sons, actually, and a grandchild, and he runs 4-leaf heating and air conditioning business.
Okay.
Been doing that for several years.
Well, you know what he's going to say. He's going to tell everybody that you saved the best for last to talk about him.
That's
right?
And that's exactly right. Since the other two can't hear me.
Well, they can through the
That's true.
wonders of the internet.
I've
So
just,
got to
messed,
be
I've
careful.
just messed up.
I don't. Well, Christmas is going to be fine.
That's what we'll work it out.
But like we were talking about, you said your dad passed away and
He did.
felt the need to be back closer to family,
Right.
and your mother was still here.
Yep.
And what did you do for a living when you got back to Lebanon?
Okay. Well, when I first got back, I mentioned I went to Precision Rubber for about 3 months. That was about enough for me there. But I got into the photography business in 1988 full time. I actually started in '77
Right.
and did it off and on and part time things like that. But in '88, opened the business on the square next to Charlie Shoe Repair, which is next to the Capitol Theater, and was there for 21 years. And
Was it that long?
it was that long.
I did not realize
Yeah.
you were there. I mean,
Went
did
fast.
a lot of weddings, did a lot of engagement pictures, family reunions.
A lot of those, a lot of children, a lot of babies, and I have families and I have children come up to me now and say, "I remember you used to take my pictures." And I used to give away a free 8x10 to draw in business, and I've still got free 8x10s hung on to, I don't know how many walls in Lebanon now.
Well, that's a good thing about
Yeah.
it. People will remember you for that.
They do.
And oddly enough, there was one of your friends and competitors was across the street. I think another photography studio.
Ken Griffith across the street, and is a good friend of mine, and Sonny Barrett ran Seat Studio
Right.
just around the corner. We were all within walking distance. We were all good friends, and we helped each other out. I go to church with Sonny, so I see him every Sunday.
And you started before digital, I guess. in that
Started
time.
before digital. We had the big medium format cameras, and it was a lot of fun. I've been extremely lucky to be able to do things that I really enjoyed doing in my life.
But while you're running the photography business, you put your hat in the ring for a county commission seat. And had you had an interest in getting involved in politics somewhere? Had that been burning in your mind for years?
Well, not exactly. For a while, what got me interested in it was the taxes were going up, and I was upset about that. And I
That's
told
fair
myself, well,
enough.
if you're going to be this upset, you might as well do something about it.
Who said that?
Me. So I started researching. I had no idea. I'd never heard of the county commission. Didn't know anything about it. I was going to run for city council, and I ran into Ava Preston, who was on the city council and the county commission. She said, "Well, Bernie, the city council doesn't come up for 2 more years. Why don't you run for county commission? It's up this year." I said, "What's that?" And she told me, and I went and pulled a petition and ran for city council. And two young fellows ran against me, and I won.
Were you surprised?
Yes.
Well, so you came in with kind of that idea of I'm going to be a fiscal conservative and
Yes.
watch your tax dollars like a hawk.
Yes. That was the whole idea.
And but going into the county commission, and I've asked several of them about this. What coming into it, not having any prior political experience, what was maybe the biggest surprise or eye opener that you saw when you got on the county commission?
Well, the biggest eye opener for me was that you can't do everything that you want to do because of laws and other things that hinder you from doing that.
Right.
The other thing that caught my attention was that whatever you do takes forever. They say that politics grinds slow but grinds fine. I
Right.
guess it does. But
Right.
it takes a while to get anything done.
And that's you're talking about having to get a consensus with
Get a
government.
yes.
It's not just one person, man or woman.
That's
can do
right,
it.
because we had 25 county commissioners, that, and several committees you have to go through, and you have to. It was a good idea to be kind of quiet that first year or so and learn the ins and outs of politics. And I got quite an education.
And you were on the county commission for how many years?
16 years,
So that would be 4 terms. I
4
guess?
terms.
And did you ever have during that 4 terms? Did you ever have any serious opposition?
I can't say that I did, except for the last election that I lost was against Sue Vanetta, and she turned out to be quite an astute politician herself.
What do you call it? A formidable opponent, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She did a good
But
job.
y'all are still friends.
Oh, absolutely. We were friends during the campaign.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Sue has done an excellent job. I'm happy that she won. It worked out great for me, but but she has done a good job, and I'm happy that she won that race.
And during your time on the county commission, I think, if I remember correctly, you were on the finance committee or budget committee
Yes.
several years.
Yes, I forget how many years it was, but it was several years. I was chairman of the budget committee, which is they say it's the most powerful committee. I don't know about that, but it's a very important committee. Everything has to go through there. I was also chairman of the WEMA committee, and during that time we built 1 or 2 fire stations. And I was on education, cable TV, a lot of committees.
And looking back at your time on the county commission, were there any votes that stand out that were really tight, or something that the county did, whether it was building a school or a new road or industrial park or something that you look back and you say, you know, it wasn't just me, it was a team effort, but that's something we did that was right.
Absolutely, and that's, you talk about the learning thing. You have to learn to work together with people and to gain a consensus and to do what's best for the whole county or the city in this case. Now, this wasn't an earth-shattering piece of legislation, but at one time, shortly after I was first elected, we were going to have a 10-cent tax increase, which wasn't a lot. But I was strong on taxes, and I had told the people who were voting for me I wasn't going to raise taxes, and several of the commission members came to me, Bernie, it's just 10 cents. Can you do that? I can't. Stratton Bone came to me and said, Bernie, could you go a nickel? Would you raise taxes just a nickel? I said, Stratton, I promised those people that voted for me that I wouldn't do it, and I'm not going to do it. He said, well, if you promise them, that's what you ought to do.
Well, that sounds like something he'd say, right?
It is, and I've had a great respect for Stratton Bone ever since.
Right. Well, that's, you know, the fellow has, or lady for that matter, has to stand by their guns. When you make a promise, and that's what people put their faith in, that's what they're counting on.
You have to be careful when you make promises when you're in office, because everything is not as it seems.
Right.
I am opposed to unnecessary and unduly high taxes, but taxes are necessary, as you know.
Right.
And government costs money, but you have to be careful with how much you spend and watch the money very carefully. And I try to do that.
Yes, sir.
And just as at another time, I did vote for a 10-cent tax increase, and I voted for it because I thought it was necessary. I had a real good friend of mine, you may know him, Tony Hearn. He passed away now, God bless him, but he's a staunch liberal. And when he read that Bernie Ash had voted for a 10-cent tax increase, he told his mother, he said, if Bernie voted for it, we needed it.
That says a lot. That sounds like Tony, too.
It was.
But you mentioned the last race, didn't get reelected to your seat on the county commission, but you had a fairly quick transition into city government.
Yeah, the election that I lost to Sue was in August, and the county, the city council seat came up in November. So I threw my hat in the ring, ran against Joe Hayes, which was another fine councilman, did a great job, and I bested him in that one. He beat me before one time, but I beat him that time and was elected to the city council.
And that was for a 4-year term, but you didn't stay for the full 4 years in that seat.
That's right. 2 years after I was elected, the mayor's race came up, and I felt like, you know, I think I can do that, and I think my opponent has some vulnerabilities, so I ran against him, and it worked out in my favor.
Well, growing up in Lebanon, what address or what street, what road did you grow up?
617 North Cumberland.
So you were right here, pretty much in the heart of Lebanon.
I was right across the street from Chums. Actually, we were born there, not born there, I was raised there when it was a 2-lane road, and they put in the Shell station right across the street, and it turned into an all-night Shell station, and my bedroom was right on the roadside.
Well, it's growing up, did you ever think that, you know, someday I'm going to be mayor of this town?
Oh, never crossed my mind.
But now that you are, you've got a kind of a historical perspective to see what it was at one time and where we are today.
Yeah.
Where do you see us going in the future?
I think this term, I've been in office for 3 years now, and it's been an amazing, eye-opening experience. The growth has been something that I've never seen, and most people in Lebanon have never seen before.
Right. And just on a personal note, we talked about your kids here a minute ago, but your wife, Marsha. And y'all been together now for several years, and I see y'all out and about, always together as a couple, seems like.
Yeah, she's a great gal and a great campaigner. But we've been together for over 15 years, and we've been married now for almost 2 years.
Yeah, and not to pry too much into business, but I know you had some health concerns with us a couple of years ago. You look great, and look like you're doing well.
Yeah, I feel great. I've had a heart valve replacement and it was open heart surgery, and it was tough, but I feel better now than I have in many years.
Well, and I hope you have plenty more to come. In the last minute or so that we have here, I always try to give folks a chance to, if they want to say, well, this is my philosophy of life, or if you wanted to give some advice to a young person, or maybe somebody who's in a career, or maybe is winding things down, an empty nester, to say, you know, I would like to know more about government, or get more involved in my community. What advice would you like to give somebody?
If you want to know more about government, which I encourage everybody to learn more about government. Like myself, I didn't know there was a county commission.
Right.
You need to get out there and learn about those things, because these are people who affect your life even more than the presidential race. Know who your city councilman and who your county commissioners are, because they are making decisions that affect you on a daily basis. I was talking, going door to door and talking to a lady in her yard one day. She said, well, before I say I'm going to vote for you, how do you feel about abortion? I said, well, I'll tell you in just a minute how I feel about that. However, I want you to know that it's never going to come up in a city council meeting. Now, that pothole in front of your house needs fixing, and we can do something about that.
Well, that's an awfully good answer. And I appreciate your insight. I appreciate you sharing our story. But what we got here, I try to give everybody a commemorative cup about our show.
Well, thank you.
And 0 tax dollars were spent on that cup. So you feel free to drink out of it and not feel guilty.
I certainly will. And you're not chintzy on your cups. That's a nice one.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a big, full-size cup.
It is.
But thank you for sharing your story.
Barry, thank you very much.